All righty, folks. As you know, our newest millionaire to the rotation is the one and only Cody Davis. We are so lucky to have him here each and every week. Today's going to be a little bit special. I'm going to turn the mic over to Cody, and he's actually going to interview me. He's going to ask me some questions, which I think is going to be pretty interesting. All righty, Cody, what do you got, buddy?
Well, I got about 7 questions for you, and I'm excited to get your take on it. Some are more personalized, some are about your debt stack, so we'll just jump into it.
I like it.
With starting the hour, what's your favorite asset that you own today and your favorite amongst your total purchases and why?
Oh, I've never been asked this. So my favorite asset today, it's probably going to surprise people, but I own a couple of small single-family homes. By small, call them sub 700 square feet. Likely 1 bedrooms. They might be configured as small 2 bedrooms, but really more like a 1 and a den. But I own a bunch of those, and I love those assets. They have, generally speaking, retirees or veterans in there, and there is 0 turnover. So when I evaluated my portfolio, which I do every year, these smaller homes are without question by miles my best performing asset. So if you're going to be my favorite thing, it's likely going to be because it's my favorite asset. So my favorite deal is it's a story I've told, but not in this context. I was working on a 10-unit building that we picked up that was vacant and in distress. And we were working on, it was vacant. I said that. So we were working on fixing it up. It was a 5 and 5 with a courtyard in between. And I got a phone call from what turns out to be the bank president of a regional or a small community bank. We're talking 2 or 3 branches. And he said, are you the owner of, blah, blah, blah apartment? I said, yep. He goes, well, I own the building next door, which I had obviously seen because I'd been on site lots of times. And he goes, would you like another one? The interesting thing about this other one is it was actually about 80% occupied. So it had 2 units vacant. It was in much better condition. But the bank had foreclosed and was sitting on it for quite a while. So we agreed to go see this building. It's in August. And if you know anything about Fresno, California, August is hot. We get there, Olivia and I, and the bank president is in a 3-piece suit with a tie. It must have been 110, 115. It was crazy hot. But, he's showing us this building, which it was the weekend. I was shocked he was in a suit, but he was. And he basically said, I know what you paid for that building. I'm willing to sell you this building, which again, better condition, 80% occupied versus 0, for the same price. And I said, in the back of my mind, I'm going, seriously? I'd have paid $100,000 more. But okay, negotiate against yourself. That's fine. And I said, well, as you can see next door, we have a very heavy lift. So, I'm not really interested in another large down payment. He goes, don't worry. We'll finance the entire thing. And I said, interesting. Same price. You're going to finance the whole purchase. I said, so what are you looking for? He goes, 2 things. We have to close by the end of the month, which was the end of the quarter for them. And I had to deposit, I think it was $40,000. It might've been $50,000 at their bank in a savings or checking account, right? So I had to show a relationship with them. And I basically said, so let me get this right. You're going to sell me this for the same price as that one. You're going to finance the entire thing. I have to close in, I think it was like 14 days or 17 days, but you're the lender, so that shouldn't be a problem. And all I got to do is, let's say put $50,000 in a savings account. He goes, yep. I shook his hand. I said, write it up. We'll buy it. So, that one deal, today's probably $800,000 to $1 million. That one unit, the other unit's the same. So that's my fun story is, and I think that stuff's coming. I think there's a lot of broke syndicators who are in deals that eventually the bank's going to foreclose on. And it's going to be guys like me who have a history and a track record of never missing payments. We're going to get phone calls like that again. Hey, Michael, do you want to buy another apartment? Hey, Michael, do you want to buy another apartment? And I'm going to negotiate the same way. very aggressively, likely zero down. I may, like one time I opened an escrow account, the other time I opened the savings account to show a relationship, but that's okay. That's just moving dollars around. So that's my favorite story.
I love that. I have not done that yet. I'd love to, but that's a really cool story. Appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, that's fun.
And on the topic of deals, going into my second question here, you started with smaller units and eventually you did some 1031s and bought bigger. How did your underwriting evolve?
Well, first it evolved atrociously because probably like most people, I assume commercial properties behave like residential, which is a horrible and dangerous mistake. Thankfully, I learned that lesson on a 5-unit building and not a 50-unit building. And the biggest thing I learned is 2 things. One, the management headache goes up dramatically. And if you're self-managing, you really got to pay attention to the management headache. I luckily have never property managed, so I'm like, I only got the stories, secondhand. But the second thing, and this is what kills landlords, is turnover. I told you earlier, my favorite asset has 0 turnover and basically 0 maintenance. Apartments turnover, my average turnover is about 2 years. Now, yes, I have some tenants that have been in there 10, 12, 15 years, but when you look at the average, it's 2 or 2.5 years. So you've got to underwrite it for a lot more turnover. And I didn't do that in the beginning. And, to put some numbers around this, it is completely possible to run a single family home at 30% expenses, 35% expenses, completely possible. I do it all the time. It is impossible, in my opinion, to run a multifamily, a commercial property at 30%. Impossible, right? You've got to plan for 40 or 45% in my experience. So underwriting changed drastically after all those painful lessons of that first 5 units.
Yeah. Well, I'd agree. And it seems like as time goes on, it gets easier because income goes up a little bit faster than the expenses. So you can get it lower, but day one, if you're underwriting for that right away, you're going to get wrecked.
Yeah. If you're underwriting with 30% expenses and you're like, oh my God, look at my yield or my return on capital is blah, dude, you're going to get wrecked.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And on that scaling piece, something I'm curious about, because you built this massive portfolio, one rental at a time. Mm-hmm. If your portfolio tripled tomorrow, would you have to change any systems, or do you feel that what you have is sufficient?
So 2 answers. If I tripled my portfolio in the same market, the only thing that would probably change is my property manager would dedicate a second full-time resource to me. Because that's the beauty of my portfolio is I manage the manager. I have 1 scheduled call a week, and I get daily reports, and I text message when the daily report doesn't look good. So just to give people the feel for, nearly 200 units, I spend about 10 minutes a day evaluating the reports, maybe 2 hours a month texting questions and responding to questions, and then 4 15 to 20-minute phone calls. If I tripled the portfolio, the phone calls would probably be longer. They would certainly be longer. Let's just be honest. Everything I have would probably double my time, but the property manager would probably have to hire a second full-time resource for me.
Okay. Well, and I like that because everything for you, it's similar to me in Moses Lake. Everything I have is within 45 minutes of where I live. It's very convenient.
Yeah, that's the key. But to your point, if I triple my portfolio, but it was in a second market, oh my God, that would be horrible for me. My quality of life would suck because I would have to build. Because again, my story starts by firing my first 5 property managers. Right? I don't want to go through that again. If I had to replicate my Central Valley portfolio in Vegas, almost shoot me in the head. I have no interest in going through that again. And part of that's because I have enough and I'm comfortable where I'm at. But if I had let me be clear, if I had the opportunity to triple my portfolio in the Central Valley and they were deals I liked, I would do it tomorrow because it's not my responsibility to do the work.
Yeah. You did the work, so now you don't have to.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I like that. Looking back as you scaled up your portfolio, would you say there's a go-to renovation or it's your favorite value creation plan for a project?
Adding bedrooms. At least in my market, rents is based on bedrooms first, bathrooms second, and parking third. Parking being street parking, covered parking, off street, covered parking, or garage. So for me, my biggest remodel, my biggest value add, something I've probably done no less than 40 times, was taking a underused portion of the house or sometimes the apartment and creating an additional bedroom. An additional bedroom could be an extra 250 to $400 depending on the unit. And that's real money. And it costs like $3,000, right? Some drywall, a door, a closet. It's not that hard. I'm not talking functional obsolescence, like going through a bedroom to get to a bedroom. That's nonsense. But there was a time when people build big family rooms and big, formal dining rooms and all these other things. It's just not functional today. I love taking dead space and creating bedrooms.
Yeah. I'm trying to do that right now on my 15 unit, turn a 1-bed into a 2-bed. It's going to cost about $3,500, but the rent goes from $900 to $1,200. So I get all the money back in a year.
I would do that every single time. Every single time. And here's another story that you may not, you probably know, but the audience may not know. 1-bedrooms turn over more than 2 bedrooms, right? 2 bedrooms often have kids that may have school and all these other things. So if you could take a 1-bedroom that historically turns over every 18 months, create a 2-bedroom that turns over every 3 years, you also win on turnover.
And that's legit. I've got a 12-plex, 100% of them are 1-beds. And I have a couple people that have been there 20, 30 years, but everyone else, it's 18 months to 3-year max.
Yeah. Agreed.
They leave. So they're all going to find a bigger place.
Yeah, they get in a relationship. They do this. They want a pet. They do that. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, I like that. When you hit critical mass, let's think, okay, you're not just getting by, but your rentals have gotten you to a place of affluence. Was there something that you stopped doing that you wish you stopped doing earlier?
Yeah, man, we got so conditioned to live below our means. We're talking 50% of our income for a decade, that we didn't enjoy life early enough. Like we could have done, my daughter is older than you, as we've talked about off air, but there's a couple of things, like she was still at home. We could have taken some more meaningful trips with her, and we would likely hold on to those memories today and treasure them. So we probably should have loosened up the purse strings, 3 years earlier, maybe 4. And we didn't, because we had a scarcity mindset, and we had been so conditioned to just keep grinding, not look up. We were always the next deal. I do regret missing out on, it would be so cool to, have done 1 or 2, 5-star, 6-star trips with our daughter before she's an adult, right? That was a mistake for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a little bit more personal, but I appreciate that input, because I don't want to live on 2,000 and change forever.
Yes.
A month. So that's good to know. And so I've got one real last question for you that I'm curious about.
This has been fun.
Hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, I try to put as much thought as I could into these questions. Who is someone you and I wouldn't both know that left the biggest impact on you, and what lesson did they leave you with?
Sam Zell. I don't know if you probably have heard the name Sam Zell. Do you know who Sam Zell is?
Heard the name. That's about it.
Yeah. So Sam Zell cut his teeth in the 80s. And he started, he was a college student. He figured out a way to manage a building while being a college student, getting rent free, kind of just grinding. And ultimately, he built up something called, I think it was called Equity Residential. Might have been Residential Equity, something like that. One of the largest ETFs for residential properties, for apartments. And he ultimately sold that to Blackstone at the peak of the market. So when you think about somebody who grinds for 30, 40 years, then has the wherewithal to realize we are at peak moment and sells the entire portfolio to Blackstone and just goes, peace, and timed the market perfectly in hindsight, you got to respect that guy. But most of my experience with Sam Zell is after that. Once he did that, he came out from behind, like he was kind of a private guy, right? He didn't want to get shot, have people take shots at him. But once he had done that, I thought, and I wish he was still around, rest in peace. I always thought he was the best interview on CNBC and Bloomberg because he just didn't care. He wasn't worried about impressing anybody. He didn't have a book he was talking to, meaning like an investment book. He was just like truly trying to help people. So I think Sam Zell, if I was a young investor, I would go back and watch Sam Zell interviews. He, in fact, has a book called Am I Being Too Subtle?, which is an excellent read. I would highly recommend you buy that. And be warned, Sam Zell is not afraid to swear. So if if F words bother you, it's going to be a tough listen. But if you really listen to his message, a guy like you, dude, it's got to light a fire under your ass because it just shows you what you could do. He started at your age. He grinded like you and he became one of the richest mother freakers on the planet doing what you do. So if I were you, I would spend hours consuming Sam Zell legacy content and get his book now.
All right. And that's the name of the book was
Am I being too subtle?
All right. I will throw that on my Audible list.
There you go.
Perfect. Well, that's it for my questions for you, but I appreciate you sharing. It's cool to be able to interview you.
I appreciate the opportunity. Again, folks, if you don't know, Cody is the man. He will be speaking at the ORAD event in Vegas next President's Day weekend. So he is coming out for that. He's already agreed. So Cody, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on each and every Monday.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. You got it.